All right, here we go for some dashing cinematography again. I'm Kelly. I'm going to try and keep this short and sweet as much as possible, but for my Prep DBQ friends, I just want to kind of lay out a summary of what I see coming down the road and why I keep pestering you about the economy and stuff. So let me nutshell it real quick. The big question is the sky falling? You know, these banks slipping away and all this stuff. We'll answer that, according to my opinion anyway. And so why is it happening right now? We'll cover briefly. And then what will happen as a result? And then kind of let's talk about when we can expect things to happen. And then on the tail end of this, let's talk about how to prepare ourselves in the end. So let's hope we can keep this short. Question one, is the sky falling? Well, yeah, of course the sky's falling. Everybody knows that. But in my opinion, we're only seeing little tiny pebbles and stuff at this point. These banks, yeah, some of them are too big to fail, so the government's going to go in and back them up from the FDIC and so on. That means it is ultimately coming out of your tax dollars, no matter what they tell you. So that's going to deflate your money even more, or devalue it rather. So you can expect that to happen, which will ultimately change the value of your dollar in the marketplace. So yeah, happy day. But still, it's little bits and pieces falling at this point. We'll get into what's happening with the banking system now, and that's going to show you where some of the bigger pieces are and what to expect, and hopefully how to get out from under them as they start to drop on us. But first of all, as far as what's happening with the banks, we have to ask the question, why? Why is it happening? So not sure where everybody's at on this. Let's do a brief summary. So World War II's over, and all the allies get together, and because America came to the rescue and we're the only ones that aren't ultimately destroyed and just trying to rebuild everything, they said, well, let's call the US dollar our world reserve currency. So everybody bought US dollars and sent their gold to us, and we put it in Fort Knox and wherever else. So that worked out well for a few years. Vietnam comes along, and you know, the French were in there pretty early, and for good reasons. But they started to wonder whether we were really being honest about our money. They figured, hey, you're printing money now, which means that our gold is less valuable, and the more you do that, the less valuable it gets, because the dollar was backed, every dollar, by X amount of gold, $35 worth of gold. So an ounce of gold, I think, was $35, if I recall right. At any rate, so into New York Harbor come the French battleships, and they say, oh, we'd like our gold, please. So over a period of a few months, they loaded all that onto there at $35 per, and off they went. Well, that frightened the powers that be in our banking system, and so shortly thereafter, Nixon took us off the gold standard. Dollars are no longer tied to gold. What? Everybody kind of, you know, freaks out. And that's the thing to remember in all of this, that I just turned 60 a couple of days ago. A lot of you may be younger than that. Some of you may be older than that. But remember, there's always a context to life. I was a very young kid when he did this, and I don't remember anything about it. I don't remember the panic and the fear and all of that. I don't remember when the dollar was still backed by a real commodity like gold. I could never take a gold certificate or a silver certificate in and trade it for an ounce of gold, or silver rather. So these things happen, and we don't realize the gradation as it goes from light to dark. So we're getting a little darker here when he takes us off the gold standard. 1974, Henry Kissinger, which I grew up with that name. He was always on the news. He's still around, for crying out loud. He went to the nations in Arabia area, that peninsula, and he said, look, I know you guys are trying to pull yourself out of the dark ages, but you've got this stuff boiling out of the ground, this oil, and we've figured out how to use that over the last few years. You saw that with World War II. Tell you what, we'll protect you if you sell your gold only in, or gold. Sell your oil, which is better than gold now, only in US dollars. So, oh, okay, we'll do that. And so you get the, what do they call it? Petrodollar. So everybody on the planet, they want to buy gold from, or again, they want to buy oil. That's how precious oil is. They want to buy oil from the OPEC nations. They got to spend it in dollars. So everybody's buying up dollars. So they want the dollars. It's an important thing. Now, in the process of all that, you've probably heard of fractional reserve banking. So our bankers say, well, you know what? You can loan out more than $1 for every dollar that you have on deposit. Why don't we say for every 10, for every 10 you can loan out 9. You got to have at least $1 in there for every 10. So you can imagine how that does. It's pretty risky business now. That makes bankers think, well, I can try that and that and that, and if this one fails, no big deal. This one over here will pick it up. So that's fractional reserve, and we've gotten pretty shaky on that crap in the last 50 years or whatever. Now add to that, and I just learned about this recently, during COVID, they even took that out of the picture. The banks don't even have to have that. Wow, why? Okay. So I also learned that we have printed more money in the last 3 years than all the money we printed previously in our history combined. That's a pretty big number. I think it's 90% of the dollars out there have been created in the last 3 years. You know, we went trillions and trillions of dollars in debt for all this stuff. So anyway, that's kind of a big deal. What does that tell you about the dollar? That means that if you had a stack of money that tall, its value is now the stack down here. You used to be able to buy so much with it. I like the example of when you're scrolling through Facebook and you see these old cool cars, the Barracuda, the Dodge Charger Daytona, you know, you buy it for $6 grand. It's like, there's a lot of money back then, but why? So let's say you got like 10 stacks of money. Let's say there's $10,000 in each stack. That's what, $100,000. So it takes you a portion of one stack to buy a Daytona. Cool. How much is that Daytona worth today? It's going to take probably the whole pile to get that. But let's say you don't want a Daytona, you just want a new car. The Daytona at the time in '60s was a new car. So I just want a new car. Here's a stack of $10,000 undo it. Well, how about 20? No? How about 30,000? You've taken a third of this stack to buy that same car. That's the value of your money today. And it's worse than that. That's just what we realize at this point. On top of that, you got a bunch of political stuff going on in the background. You know, our pullout in Afghanistan signaled the world that you can't trust America militarily, that we're not going to back you up and protect you. So I'm sure the OPEC nations are going like, we're trading in petrodollars because they said that they would protect us. Wait a minute. And now they're over in Ukraine fighting a war with these Russians. What's going on there? So you may have realized the day after we pulled out of Afghanistan in that huge mess, was it Saudi Arabia, I believe, set up a deal with Russia as a protectorate. So what's that telling you? I'm just saying. There's a whole bunch of other little pieces, and this stuff's all over the internet. I'm not telling you anything new. You can go out there and research all this on your own and find out what's going on. Let's talk about some bigger pieces that might be falling out of the sky then, because what will happen as a result of all this inflationary type thing and the devaluation of your money. Have you heard of the Belt Road Initiative? This has been going on for a decade or so. It's the biggest, what's the word? Oh my gosh. There's no bigger construction construction project on the planet than to try and connect the world with this Belt Road Initiative. It's going to hopefully bring all the products from Africa up through Asia and Europe and over into China. China's investing heavily. Russia's investing heavily. All these people are putting money. The only person not putting money into this is America. That's peculiar, isn't it? But that's been going on, and that's growing, and pieces are falling together, you know, all these little alliances and so on. Let's talk about BRICS. I don't even remember what BRICS stands for, but Russia and some other. It's a group of people that are coming together to form what they intend to be a currency. It's going to be backed by actual commodities. And so that makes a big deal, you know. The US dollar is valueless because there's nothing backing it up but promises that we're going to pay off these treasuries that you buy. So now we've got something with real commodities behind it, and other nations can come into this, buy their way in with their gold or their oil or whatever the commodities they bring to the table, and it can trade back and forth accordingly. And inflation doesn't necessarily have to be the huge problem that it is today, because everybody's paying inflation on the US dollar. It's not just us. It sucks for everybody. So there's the BRICS things. 80% of the humans on this planet are in one of those nations that are coming together on this BRICS thing. So that's kind of a big deal. So this question is, what will happen? Keeping those couple of things in mind, what if the OPEC nations woke up tomorrow and said, you know what, America? You're going green. That's not really part of our value system. That's not going to help us, in fact, because we sell oil and that's all we really got other than sand. And we're not impressed with your value system, you know. We tend to think a little bit differently about these things. Won't get into the differences there. But they might say, you know, it's been fun and I appreciate all you've done for us, but we're done. Starting today, you can buy oil in any denomination you want. Oh, look, there's BRICS over in the corner. Maybe you want to buy into that because they're all bought into it. So that's just one thing that could happen. Imagine what would happen if they said that. Because automatically that would signal to the whole world, who I think is already into this and understand what's happening, and they're positioning themselves. Speaking of positioning, the central banks around the world have often been really deep in US treasuries. In 2017, they started selling those off. And now we're looking at them buying gold. They're buying and buying and buying gold. Why? Because that's the most stable commodity out there. And it's a big part of the whole BRICS currency system. So all these central banks buying gold, that's kind of an indicator that they expect to be a part of this shift. So what happens when everybody says, okay, bye-bye petrodollar, we're buying with BRICS or whatever commodity, it doesn't even matter. I think we could see inflation through the roof here in the States. I think you could see stocks, bonds, real estate drop through the floor because everybody knows the dollar's worthless, and that's going to scare the hell out of Wall Street, and it's going to mean that people who intended to buy a house aren't going to, and all that other stuff. You can put the pieces together. Bonds, of course, that's obvious. What's a treasury bond worth? It's already a 10-year bond is like a -3%. You're going to hold your money in that. That's what killed the Silicon Valley Bank. They were doing too much of that and weren't paying attention, or else they were part of this whole plan. Who knows? These things will get slammed. So what happens then? Well, I think this CBDC, central bank digital currency that America's been working on, and about every other developed nation has been working on, I think that's when they'll offer that. They'll let us get really scared first. Oh, the inflation, I can't afford even bread, you know, oh, this is awful. And then, oh, my stock market, oh, my 401k is almost worthless. Oh, what am I going to do? And then they come in, here's the CBDC. We brought you a digital currency. And I know you don't trust it, but look, we're going to save the day. So in they come with their digital currency, and maybe they'll give us some time to kind of digest that and get comfortable with it. But it may be that things are too shocking and scary to even do that. They may just say, here, look, You thought you had $10,000 in the bank, but your bank went broke. I'm sorry. And we can't protect it. You know, the FDIC is only so big. So along comes the digital currency. I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to give you 50 cents on the dollar for every dollar you had in that bank. Oh, well, thank you. These aren't backed up by anything. They're just making money out of thin air. So what do they care how much they get? Maybe it's 20 cents on the dollar. Maybe it's 10 cents on the dollar. Maybe it's a dollar for dollar on worthless dollars. So they're going to give you those. And the beauty of these digital currencies is, of course, they can track everything that you do. They can program it to say, well, I don't really want you going to a different neighborhood than you're in, so yours is only going to work in this particular radius, and so on. I mean, you can read about digital currencies. It's ugly stuff. Don't want to get anybody panicked over it. But you can see here, there's big chunks of sky falling if we get this far. That's just not pretty stuff. So we're about 15 minutes into this now. Let's talk about when this could happen. And I'm no prophet, I can't tell you, but I can look out there and see that these alliances are coming together. My guess would be that when all these alliances are in place and you hear the OPEC nations say, then it's going to happen fast. So I would imagine that there will be some people who stick with Team Dollar, but who they would be, I don't know. They'd have to be in really sucky condition to continue to hang out with the bully. And we have been a monetary bully throughout the nation. I won't get into that. You can read about that on the internet. So Canada, would they still be on Team Dollar? I kind of think not. They've really sold themselves out to wokeness and green energy, so I think they'll roll with the other side, whoever that ends up being. And Great Britain, I don't know. Great Britain, I think they're in a world of hurt already themselves, so I wouldn't. If they hang with us, it's not going to be any big deal to, or great help to us. Australia, kind of the same boat, woke and broke. Japan, they may be an ally, but they're in a world of hurt too because they don't have much population left below the age of 50, so it's getting tough on them as well. So at any rate, I think it could happen fast. I think it could be within a few months, maybe shorter, maybe longer, depends on how long we can drag it out and who we can keep frightened of us for a while so they don't destroy our economy. But you know, that's the thing behind the scenes that I really don't even know how to describe. It's almost like a new warfare, this economic warfare. What's going on in Ukraine? I really think that's about economic stuff more than about wanting the land. Of course, they want the land. It's a big producer. Everything you could want is there. But I think it's really about hurting the West. And I won't get into it any further. Okay. How to protect yourself in this, if you even can. Realize I'm not a financial advisor. If you know me, that's absolutely obvious. But I would say that CBDCs, I'm not too worried about them at this point. I don't think it's the mark of the beast or anything like that. But it's certainly going to be priming people for it. And it's certainly going to have all kinds of evils attached to it as far as how they track you and how they determine what you can do and when you can do it. I mean, they may say, like some of these other banks, you can't buy guns, you can't buy bullets. I don't think you need to buy gasoline, or maybe only this much. It's that sort of thing. So, you know, it may be that we have to put ourselves into the CBDCs for a while. But what can you do to not be subject to only the CBDCs? Will the CBDC mean that you no longer have checking or banking? As these banks start to fall, we know that the too big to fail banks will be backed up by depositors, not by the FDIC in the end. The FDIC is only going to get the first ones, and I think later on the bigger banks will be backed up by depositors, and maybe even the local regional banks. That might be how they protect them. They'll say, you know what, we just don't have the money in the FDIC, so we'll take the depositor's money. You'll have to sell the assets, and that money will be given back to the depositors in the form of shares. How's that? That's great. You got 10 shares in this worthless bank. Isn't that great? That's wonderful. So what will become of the dollars you had there? Maybe they'll give you some degree of compensation, but your dollars are not going to be protected probably. So commodities, I would highly recommend commodities. Again, I'm not a financial advisor, but I know I've lost my job once, and we fed our kids because I had food in the basement. Being a prepper all these years, I had enough to get through those few months, and off we went. So I do recommend that you buy food. Maybe some of that long-term storage food, because that's the type of stuff that not only can it get you through for a while, but let's say you need some medicine. You can take some of that long-term storage food and trade it to somebody who's hungry, or to somebody who can get you the medicine that you need. You know, it's that sort of thing. Yeah, there will always be a black market, and you may have to watch out. But shelter, food, shelter. Shelter's a tough one, because is your house really an asset? No, it's not. What are assets? Assets are burdens that you're willing to take with you. To me, the biggest assets I have are the people around me. Now, if I'm trying to carry those people on my back, I'm a little guy. That's going to be tough work. But I love them enough. I'll do what I can to carry them. Your house is similar. You may want to do what you can to keep that house, but maybe you want to downsize in the meantime while you still can. Or maybe you want to take some extra dollars and put them into an RV. I don't know, but think about shelter. You don't want to have to live in some improvised tarp tent on one of Nancy Pelosi's streets, right? So be thinking about what you might want to do. Let's go back to assets. Barterables. So what are barterables? That food I talked about might be barterable. First aid. Get some first aid now. It's still cheap. Get that type of stuff. Antibiotics and stuff like that that you can get that might be helpful. Alcohol. Who doesn't like a little bit of alcohol here and there? So bottles of whiskey on the wall might be a good long-term storage that you can barter with. That's an asset in a sense. Is it worth carrying 100 miles? Well, I don't know. But if you're stored up in your place and you need some medicine, you might be able to trade whiskey for aspirin. Who knows? Gold and silver, that's obvious. I've been talking a lot about that, and not because I'm that big on gold and silver, but as I watch the dollar continue to drop, that stack of money, if its value was here, now it's here. Well, what can I do about that? I can't just continue to let it disappear. If I've got piles of it over here and they're continuing to devalue it, I want to turn it into something that has an intrinsic value. Silver and gold have an intrinsic value. So that's why I took one of my IRAs and turned it into gold, and I have it stored elsewhere just so that it's safe. And buy silver. You know, there's plenty of silver shops around town. Learn how to buy and sell silver. It may come to a point where you've got 50 or 100 silver coins laying around that you bought at, well, today you'd probably be paying $28 or so per. And it may be that as the dollar continues to plummet and silver will go through the roof, gold will go through the roof, because they kind of trade opposite. Right now they're kind of held down. There's a bunch of paper stuff going on behind the scenes where big bankers are trying to make it look less valuable. We're just under $2,000 for gold an ounce right now, but elsewhere in the world, if it were valued correctly, it's probably closer to 2,500. But those sort of things are eventually going to eke their ways out, especially as dollars become less valuable. So gold and silver, you can take that silver coin that you bought for $28 and maybe sell it for $50, and you can buy some actual stuff you need, you know, food, medicine, or whatever, maybe some shelter. Those are the type of things that I really recommend you to look into and understand. Before I move into the next asset, I would throw in this little wrench. We don't know how things are going to unfold. War is imminent around the world, and it could be that it's easier for them, whoever it be, Russia, China, I don't know, North Korea, Indonesia, India, whoever, there's all kind, Iran, there's plenty of nuclear people around. Maybe somebody would decide to nuke the crap out of America. God forbid. But if that happens, we could be reduced to a bunch of warring tribes over here. And in that case, it might be good to have some barterables like bullets, too. I really don't think we're ever going to come to a time where I'm going to take this against the government. I really don't. I'm out for a hike today, by the way. I don't just happen to walk around with guns all the time, although I would enjoy doing that. Yeah, it's the first day of spring here, so that's awfully nice. I am not thinking that we're going to have to duke it out with the government or with the blue helmets or anything like that. I think we're at the point where we're going to have to protect ourselves maybe more from protesters. Imagine when all this crap goes down and they start to scream and yell and carry on their fits, or from pirates. We don't have to be on the sea to deal with pirates. You go into any of those big cities and you see pirates all around you. You see carjackings and things like that. You tell me that's not a pirate? That's ultimately what they're doing. They steal your car. Why? It's an act of piratism. They are considering that area theirs. They're going to take whatever they want and they're going to do whatever they want with it. And you may have to protect yourself from such people. So, and certainly there's the idea of hunting and things like that. So having bullets and fishing lures and fishing line and some poles extra might be a useful commodity. But the best commodity, if you will, that you can have is your relationships. And if you've known me for a while, you know that's the biggest thing to me. When we first started Prep DBQ, it was about getting people to know one another so that we can learn who to trust and who we need to keep at arm's length and so on. There's more value in that than anything else, because I cannot gather everything that I need, and there are needs that will come up that I can't anticipate. So what do? I may have to reach out to you or you to me and so on, and we may have to trade some commodities back and forth so that we can both afford to help each other. That's just the nature of the beast, and that's living in communities. So keep that in mind. There may be some people you want to entirely break ties with, but I don't picture that as being the biggest part of this. So keep your friends close. The biggest relationship that you want to think about is to be right with God. And I don't know if you know that I'm that type of person who would preach that to you. I'm not the type of person to beat you over the head with the Bible, but I know my Bible very well. I happen to be pretty well studied. And the things we're talking about today, and the wars and rumors of wars, and all of that other stuff, and the devaluation of money, and coming to a point in life where inflation is going to be so high that you'll sell a day's wages for a quart of barley, that stuff's all in the Bible. You want to talk about any of that, I'd be glad to. Pull me aside. I'm not embarrassed to talk to anybody about it, and I'll keep it quiet. Let's see. Yeah, and that whole thing, that spiritual aspect of that, is why our options are limited, because ultimately we are moving pieces in a giant spiritual war. Maybe you don't want to believe that. That's fine. I don't like you any less, but that's where I'm at, and I'd be glad to talk to you about it. Right now, give me your ideas in the comments below. Tell me what you think about any of these ideas we've talked about. Maybe there's some stuff I missed that we need to look at a little bit closer. Maybe there's some stuff where I'm way off base. Feel free to throw it in there. Let's have a conversation. This isn't all about me talking. This group is for you guys. So jump in here, start your own post, make your own video, whatever. Let's talk about this and get some ideas rolling so that we can all work together as a community to help one another. All right? I think I'm going to finish my walk. Y'all take care.